once mighty army of Azeroth lay among the blackened and charred remains of Stormwind Keep. Those that escaped fled across the Great Sea, bringing tales of the suffering they had faced at the hands of the Orcish hordes. Eager to engage in battle once again, the Orcs constructed ships of war to bear them across the Great Sea. The Orcish warriors yearned for the sounds of battle to fill the air and looked to the far horizon for new blood to spill. Using the weapons forged by their new allies, the humans made haste to prepare for the onslaught. While dwarven cannon were being loaded, others armed themselves with elven steel and mail. United in arms with new allies against a common foe, mankind stands at the shores of destiny and awaits the coming of the Tides of Darkness.
Tides of Darkness, indeed. But these were not ill tidings for me. I loved this game, and I still do. I played Warcraft 2 back in the day when it was new on my grandpa's PC. Yeah, I was still coming over for visits and playing whatever he could get. It was really the only way I could play computer games back then. But when I first saw this game, it was the coolest thing I saw since Orcs and Humans. My mind was blown again. One thing you'll notice right off the bat starting this game up is how great the graphics are. These SVGA graphics still hold up really nice, with pretty detailed sprite work and bright colors that really pop off the screen. I especially appreciate the little details here, like the Goblin Alchemist with the Christmas lights strung up. That's just awesome. The music is also great. It has Glenn Stafford, who's been a long-time Blizzard mainstay, who's contributed to a lot of their other games here. But this music's pretty memorable. I've heard it for several years of my life playing the game.
I'm a medieval man.
The other thing you'll notice very quickly is that this game is overall much faster paced and it's easier to control. You don't have to click on every button to use any action, like you have to hit move to move and attack to attack. You can just right click and they'll move or attack whatever, and you won't have to differentiate between the two actions. You can also select more units at once. You can select 9, which is a pretty big improvement up from the 4. And you can hotkey group units together by hitting control and a number. And when you hit like the corresponding number, 1 or 2, you can control that group. And it just makes, attacking and defending or sieging like a lot easier than it is in the first game, which is kind of a mess. I know that in the Sega Saturn and PlayStation versions of the game though, they allowed you to control a lot more units at once. I can't remember the exact number because it's been a long time since I've played those versions of the game, but I know it was upward of 20 or something. It was ridiculous. Before I get into the rest of this stuff, I do want to go over some of the other changes this game's made from the first one. Pretty much all of these are improvements, but they're also worth noting individually. For instance, Fog of War, which is a mechanic where if you don't have an active unit or building on an area of the map, it's obscured from your vision, and you can't really see what's going on after it's been explored, but you will know what buildings are there and they'll be marked on your minimap. It's just an extra mechanic to give you more incentive to scout or keep watch around your base, which is cool. Naval units and the new resource oil were also added, and the naval units in water just add another layer to the game of strategy. You need oil to build ships, and you may have to engage in some naval battles to get more oil or transport some units safely across the water. Towers were also added, which you can build around your base or anywhere else, and they'll attack enemy units for you, which is much appreciated. Base defense in Orcs and Humans could get kind of rough sometimes. There's also rocky terrain and rock walls, which adds more nuance to the maps. Your ground units can't actually get around this stuff, and the only way to remove them is to blow them up with demolition units. The Dwarven Demolition Squad or Goblin Sappers. You can also construct buildings anywhere on the map where the terrain will allow it, and if you no longer have to be tethered to roads, but something else was removed with the roads which I didn't like. For some reason they removed the ability to build walls, which I thought was kind of lame. There's only a few missions in the campaigns where walls are in place, and you can't even repair them or rebuild them, so once they're gone, they're gone. Finally, this I like. They added more FMV cutscenes to the game instead of just the intro. And while it's still pretty early for Blizzard cinematics, they're still pretty awesome in that retro kind of way. Just want to build this goddamn seals. But while some things have changed, some other things are still kind of the same. For example, some of the units are still kind of samey, like footmen are grunts, dragons are griffin riders, elven destroyers are troll destroyers, etc., etc. But a little bit more variance has been added with 2 units on each side, elven archers and troll axe throwers. The elven archers have a little bit more damage potential when you upgrade them to rangers, which makes them pretty sick. And then the troll axe throwers can regenerate their HP when you upgrade them to berserkers, so you can create like a whole group of these guys and just kind of do hit and run attacks and run them off, and they'll go heal after they've been beaten up. It's pretty awesome. You want a quest, huh? Alright, I'll give you a quest. I want you to go all the way down to fucking Doom Modra and solo the place by yourself. Now go! Yeah, that's what I fucking thought. Don't question me anymore. You've also got the paladins and ogre mages, and the mages and death knights, and just like in the first game, the spellcasters are a little different here. Paladins can have holy vision, which reveals a big part of the map. They can heal each other and other units, which makes them really useful. And they can also use exorcism, which kills or does damage to like skeletons and death knights themselves. Ogre mages have Eye of Kilrog, which is a little scout unit that's really fast and it's cheap. Bloodlust, which makes units do a lot more damage when you cast it on them, and runes, which is kind of like a trap, where if you cast it and anybody walks over it explodes, and sometimes it can kill units like with one hit. Mages and Death Knights get pretty different spells too. Mages have Fireball, which shoots a fireball in a straight line and deals pretty good damage to enemies. Slow, which is self-explanatory, but honestly I don't use it that much. Flame Shield, which creates a fire shield around a unit. This deals pretty good damage to any units or buildings around the unit you cast it on, but it'll also cause damage to friendly units, so I never really used that one much either. Invisibility is another self-explanatory one. Makes your unit invisible for a short period of time. Can be pretty good for some sneak attacks. Polymorph turns an enemy into a critter permanently, so essentially you instantly killed a unit. But the main reason you'd make mages is to use Blizzard, which is pretty entertaining. Am I right? Death Knights, though, have the best list of spells, I think. They have Death Coil, which deals a lot of damage to an enemy and heals the Death Knight. Haste, which makes your units attack and run faster. They can raise dead, which is always rad as hell. Cast Whirlwind, which looks like a tornado of damned wailing souls and does good damage to buildings. Unholy Armor, which works a lot like how it did before, makes your units invisible for a time at the cost of their health. And Death and Decay, where it looks like you're causing the ground to bake beneath units or buildings, and it does a ton of damage. Did I mention that Death Knights are my favorite unit in this game? They're so cool. Getting into the campaign side of this game, mission structure is unfortunately still kind of samey. Look, I'll show you.
As yet unknown, your outpost is to provide food and information for Alliance troops, and as such, should be a community consisting of at least 4 farms. You must also construct a barracks in order to...
Doomhammer, war chief of the Orcish hordes and ruler of the Blackrock clan, has
lands. The elves were ambushed by horde troops. It is believed that these elves are now being held in a
spies report that a band of human soldiers have captured a war party led by troll commander Zul Jin and...
Hey, check this out. Watch this.
Ready to serve.
Boom! Oh!
The Orcish hordes lay vanquished as the triumphant armies of the Alliance stood vigil over the evil gateway that had brought the Orcs into Azeroth. Calling upon the arcane powers of the Archwizard Khadgar, the fury of the earth and skies were unleashed upon the Dark Portal to destroy it once and for all. Blinding light dimmed, an eerie glow fell across the black morass. For though the portal was destroyed, the rift that joined these worlds at war yet remained.
Beyond the Dark Portal doesn't really change anything with the core gameplay or even add any new units you can build, but it does add more powerful hero units you can control, which are just beefed up versions of regular units really. Most objectives will revolve around utilizing this hero effectively while not getting them killed, except for at the end of each campaign where they can die and it won't really matter for the most part. Khadgar aside. At this point you can kind of see that Blizzard is really experimenting with the hero concept in RTS games. They did have units like Lothar and Medivh and Orcs and Humans, and they had Uther and Cho'Gall and Tides of Darkness, but they were not really all that powerful and could die pretty easily. Let's look at the hero lineup though for each side. Let's start with Alliance. You've got Kurdran and Skyri, which is a pretty badass Griffin rider, I guess. You've got Turelion the Paladin, who was Lothar's lieutenant during Warcraft 2, and apparently he's got some issues and blames himself for his death when you aggravate him by clicking on him. You've also got Denath, the mercenary captain. You've got Khadgar the Archmage, who was Medivh's apprentice during Warcraft 1. There's actually a whole book about him. Check it out if you want, if you're interested in the lore stuff. And then there's Ilaria Windrunner, my favorite.
You never touch the other elves like that.
Well, that may have something to do with how all the other elves are dudes. Now let's look at the Horde lineup here. You've got Korgoth Bladefist, who's chieftain of the Shattered Hand clan of the Horde, which is... they have some ritual where they crush their hands or mutilate themselves to make themselves look tough and badass, I guess, to get in. You've got Dentarg, who's the Ogre Mage for the Shadow Moon clan. You've got Deathwing, who's the corrupted aspect of the Earth for Azeroth. He's got steel plates attached to him to make him more badass and hard to kill. You've got Terran Gorfine, who is commander of the Death Knights at this point since Gul'dan has died, and all things considered, he's a pretty nice guy, actually.
Greetings.
And then finally, you've got Grom Hellscream, who's my favorite. And funny story about him, actually, when I first started to play D&D, way back in high school, I wanted to play an orc, but my DM wouldn't allow it. He kept telling me, you can't play an orc, they're dumb, and they're not part of the player races. And eventually I was able to convince him just to let me play an orc, and my character ended up being this guy. One thing to note about this game, though, is during development, Chris Metzen was given a little bit more to do with this game besides create some cool artwork like he did in Orcs and Humans. He pretty much became the lore master for the company with Warcraft 2. This is the point when Warcraft's lore became more fleshed out, and you can see things like some of the political machinations going on in the background, and more characters have been fleshed out, and you can see more important areas crop up in the world that get revisited a lot, like Blackrock Spire, Stratholme, Quel'Tha Loss, Tol Barad. It's interesting to know, though, that there's also a trashed concept for this game that I found out about not too long ago, where Bill Roper, one of the guys who worked on this game and was involved with a lot of really early Blizzard project, was saying something about how initially the concept for Warcraft 2 was something where like the orcs would open up another portal and end up in modern day Earth, and they'd have to fight us, and it'd be like orcs riding on dragons fighting fighter jets, which sounds like a really badass metal cover for like a metal album or something, but they said that they thought that was stupid and that wasn't really Warcraft, so they didn't do it. Well, what can you do? Look at this, look at this. This is like the most metal fucking thing in this game. Checking out the menus a little bit, you can see that you can also do custom games like you can in any good RTS game, where you can just play a map. And they handle it a lot better in this game, whereas before, when you would start a custom game, you'd end up completely outgunned and outnumbered, and they'd have a full base. You don't have to worry about that anymore. Everybody pretty much starts on the same level playing field, and you actually have a chance to build up and win in this. Another thing you might notice, though, is that you can also play online. And back in the day, you could play with a modem connection and stuff, but I'm playing the Battle.net edition version of this game, where it had Battle.net compatibility, and it made it a lot easier to play with people online. You know, I heard it's still up and running. Let's see if it still works. Oh, there's nobody here. Oh. Well, Whoa! Something else neat that's worth noting is that while this game was out, there was a lot of third-party utilities and expansions created for this game. One utility in particular was a program called War2XED, created by Daniel Limburg, and I think it was created around 95 or 96. Basically, this guy reverse engineered Blizzard's map file called PUD, and then he made a custom map editor. It was the first of its kind, I think. And it was so good that Blizzard themselves actually started to use it, and then they had the idea from that. It was like, why don't we just make a map editor for the rest of our games? And they did so, and StarCraft was the first game they had that came packed in with a map editor. Really, though, I think this game still holds up pretty well today. It's definitely more fun and a lot easier to get into compared to Orcs and Humans. It's a great game, and it was the one that I think really catapulted Blizzard to new heights. And just after this game, another great one came out that's easily a contender for one of my favorites of all time. Holy shit, it's Diablo! Hey, thanks for watching, listening, whatever, however you did this. If you want to comment or like or subscribe, do that. If you want to hate me, do that. It only makes me stronger anyway. And check out these other videos. Like my friend Cliche Mustache, or Andy, we've done some episodes of a show called Relevant Stuff, and he also does his own videos on his own channel.